Did you notice how the NFC champion Seahawks were built? With Seattle one win from another Super Bowl title, let's dig into it. The story of the John Schneider era in Seattle doubles as a case study in the volatility of draft success for most NFL teams. Soon after Schneider and Pete Carroll took over the Seahawks in 2010, the franchise went on one of the most famous draft heaters in recent NFL history. Between 2010 and 2012, the Seahawks drafted the pillars of what would become the Legion of Boom era in Seattle. Earl Thomas, Cam Chancellor, Russell Okung, Richard Sherman, KJ Wright, Bobby Wagner, and Russell Wilson were all drafted in Schneider's first 3 years. Between them, those players have combined for 39 Pro Bowls, and a couple are probably headed to the Hall of Fame. But just as it seemed like Seattle had discovered the secret sauce for draft success, it was gone. From 2013 to 2021, the Seahawks drafts have produced a combined 8 Pro Bowl appearances, and one of those was for punter Michael Dixon. Pro Bowls are a flawed way to measure draft success, fine. How about this? During that 9-year span, the Seahawks drafted 25 players in the top 100. 3 of them, Justin Britt, Tyler Lockett, and DK Metcalf, ended up signing multi-year extensions to stay in Seattle. Starting in 2022, the Seahawks got the hot hand yet again. 2 players from that draft class, offensive tackles Charles Cross and Abe Lucas, have already signed multi-year deals to remain with the Seahawks. 2 hits in 1 draft after only 3 hits in nearly a decade. And it didn't stop there. The past 4 years have been bountiful for a franchise craving a draft weekend turnaround. 3 starters along the offensive line, both running backs, guys like Reek Woolen, Kobe Bryant, and Devin Witherspoon in the secondary, rotational defensive lineman Boye Mafe and Derek Hall in back-to-back second rounds, and a pair of ascending stars in Jackson Smith-Njigba and Byron Murphy in back-to-back first rounds. Sometimes explaining the NFL is easy. Some will likely claim that Seattle's down years are tied to Pete Carroll's final say over roster matters. But wherever the credit is due, the formula still applies. When the Seahawks went cold in the draft and the young talent dried up, they turned into a consistent yet flawed team with a divisional round ceiling. When the draft spigot turned back on, Seattle put together a roster favored to win the Super Bowl. Schneider's finishing touch came in this year's draft, when the Seahawks drafted offensive guard Grady Zabel in the first round and safety Nick Emanwari in the second, both of whom have legitimate cases as the Rookie of the Year on their side of the ball. But to fully appreciate how that draft came to be, it helps to look at another crucial area in the Seahawks team-building plan. During his 15 years as Seattle's general manager, Schneider's front office hasn't been afraid to make big swings on veteran traits. The returns have been decidedly mixed. Some moves, like the 2010 midseason deal for Marshawn Lynch, helped transform the Seahawks into one of the defining teams of the 2010s. Others, like the 2020 trade that saw Seattle send 2 first-round picks to the Jets for Jamal Adams, set the franchise back years. But right around the same time Seattle was getting its draft mojo back in 2022, the front office started a run of trades that helped turn this roster into the monster it is today. In a stunning move that spring, the Seahawks traded Russell Wilson and a 4th-round pick to the Broncos in exchange for 3 players, first-round picks in 22 and 23, and second-round picks in both of those drafts. The returns were inconceivably slanted Seattle's way. Those 4 picks turned into Devin Witherspoon, Charles Cross, Boye Mafe, and Derek Hall, all while Wilson and his new deal instantly became an albatross the Broncos are still paying for today. It was no less than a franchise-altering trade, and it was far from the last impactful move Schneider would make in the coming years. About 18 months later, the Seahawks sent 2nd and 5th-round picks to the Giants at the trade deadline for defensive lineman Leonard Williams. All Williams has done since is turned into all-pro caliber seasons in his first 2 years with Seattle. In the middle of the 2024 season, the Seahawks dealt linebacker Jerome Baker and a 4th-round pick to the Titans for linebacker Ernest Jones, a player who quietly transformed Seattle's too-high run defense and has patrolled the middle of the pass defense with the length of a small pterodactyl. There isn't usually much PR spin needed when trading for good players. You can hem and haw about price, but good teams need good guys, and it's better to have more than less. It takes a bit more courage to trade those good players away, but that's precisely what Schneider did this spring while remaking the Seahawks roster in the process. In March, Schneider traded starting quarterback Geno Smith to the Raiders in exchange for a 3rd-round pick. If that wasn't surprising enough, 2 days later, the Seahawks dealt Pro Bowl receiver DK Metcalf to the Steelers for a 2nd-rounder. Let's just say the response to those moves was mixed. The Metcalf deal always made sense. Getting a premium pick for a specific type of receiver, asking for $30 million on a 3rd contract, just felt like good business. But for some of us, I won't say who, the Smith trade brought more skepticism.
So I think that it's okay to think we need to do something differently here because we're in a rut, while not trading away a quarterback that would make half the teams in the league better if he were on their roster. He's a part of the solution, not the problem.
Whatever his issues with the Raiders last year, Smith was rarely the problem in Seattle. Dealing him without a clear answer at quarterback came with significant risk, but ultimately, the Smith and Metcalf trades would pave the way for 2 of the most impactful moves of the Seahawks' entire offseason. In exchange for Metcalf, Seattle received the 52nd pick in last spring's draft. Early on day 2, Seattle flipped that pick and the 82nd pick to move up 17 spots to grab Emanwari, A freak athlete with questions about where he'd play in the NFL, Eamon became the linchpin for head coach Mike Macdonald's plans on defense. By sticking the 220-pounder in the slot full-time, the Seahawks have been able to play with 5 or 6 defensive backs on almost all their snaps this year, a core principle that's helped them build what amounts to the perfect defense for the modern NFL. By also clearing nearly $40 million in existing salary with the Metcalf and Smith trades, the Seahawks created the flexibility necessary for Schneider to be aggressive in last year's free agent market. With ample cap space available, Seattle nabbed receiver Cooper Kupp and edge rusher DeMarcus Lawrence in hopes of squeezing the last bit of production out of their twilight years. Both moves proved crucial, with Lawrence putting together a fantastic season as a chaos agent for Seattle's league-best defense, and Kupp tallying multiple key receptions in the NFC Championship game win over his old team. But the jewel of Seattle's free agent haul, the player that allowed the rest of this plan to come together, was obviously Sam Darnold. No one really knew what to make of Darnold's single-season resurgence with the Vikings last year. Minnesota's willingness to let Darnold walk and a lukewarm market for his services are both a healthy indication of that. Darnold's $33.5 million average annual salary ranks 18th among all quarterbacks, and represents a middle-class quarterback contract that, with inflation, puts him among the final spot among guys paid like starters. What would Darnold look like outside of an offense with Justin Jefferson and a proven play caller like Kevin O'Connell? The answer, it turns out, is pretty damn good. On the whole, Darnold played at a high level all year for Seattle, before having arguably the best game of his career against the Rams in the NFC Championship game. Getting the quarterback right can cover up plenty of missteps elsewhere in the team-building process. But for the Seahawks, Darnold actually represents what most of their moves have looked like over the past year. Every coin flip proposition for Seattle landed the right way. Darnold was even better than he was in Minnesota, in part because Clint Kubiak went from a relative unknown to one of the best play callers in the NFL. The shift to Kubiak's system, along with an addition like Gray Zabel, remade the quality of Seattle's offensive line. Smith and Jigba transformed from a good receiver into a first-team All-Pro and one of the scariest players in the entire NFL. Macdonald's status as probably the best defensive coach and play caller in the league maximized every player on that side of the ball. Byron Murphy took a mini version of JSN's leap, prompting the defensive line to emerge as arguably the league's best and deepest group. Former backups like Drake Thomas and Ty Okada excelled when their numbers were called. The Seahawks' emergence as the most complete team in football was an exercise in all the ways a team can improve and surprise in a given year. A combination of proactive team building, years of sustained draft success, the proper risk tolerance, and the type of coaching on both sides of the ball that gets the best out of every player on the entire roster. The transformation is a football masterpiece, and it has Seattle one game away from a Super Bowl win almost no one saw coming. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you tuning in all season for these videos. Be sure to check out the Athletic Football Show's YouTube page for all of our Super Bowl coverage.